Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different, really focused. We've got this list from you, the listener, a very specific reading list.
Yeah.
It's supposed to unpack Karl Marx's foundational ideas. It feels less like we're wandering around a building and more like you've handed us the actual blueprints.
That's a great way to put it. These 5 texts you've selected, they're like the core intellectual blueprints. And for this deep dive, we really have to treat this specific list as, well, a kind of deliberate curriculum.
Okay.
It's interesting because it doesn't just give you a taste. It seems designed to cover the whole sweep, from his early philosophical stuff right through the politics and ending up with that huge economic analysis.
Right, an intentional syllabus. So let's lay it out. What are these 5 key works that make up this journey? And the source material used the original title, so maybe we should establish those first.
Good idea. So the sources list 5 works. First, the early one, 1844 Yazmaları, that's the 1844 manuscripts in English. Then the big philosophical shift, Alman İdeolojisi, which is the German ideology.
Got it. Then there's the famous political one.
That's Komünist Manifesto, the Communist Manifesto, obviously the most widely known.
Right.
And then the 2 big economic ones, the heavy hitters, Kapital, the finished work, and also the Grundrisse, those earlier, rougher notebooks.
Grundrisse. Okay. So that's the full set. Let's start digging in then, beginning with that first pair. It seems important that the list starts with the 1844 manuscripts. Feels like focusing on the human side first, maybe, before the big structures.
I think so, yeah. This is where Marx is still, deep in conversation with Hegel, working out his first ideas about what it means to be human, what good work looks like. And the big concept here, the real takeaway from the manuscripts, is alienation.
Alienation. Okay, but that's a word people use a lot. What did he mean specifically?
Right. It's not just feeling a bit disconnected. He actually breaks it down into 4 specific types of alienation that happen under capitalism.
4? Okay, let's hear them. That's the kind of detail we need.
Okay. First, the worker is alienated from the product of their work. You make something, but it belongs to the capitalist. It confronts you as like an alien thing.
Right.
Second, you're alienated from the act of producing. The work itself feels forced, external, not something you do to express yourself. It's just a means to an end.
Makes sense. What's third?
Third is alienation from what he calls species being. It's a bit philosophical, but basically it's the loss of that human essence, the ability to be creative, conscious, to shape the world freely. That's what makes us human for Marx, and capitalism takes it away.
Okay, product, process, human essence.
Yeah.
The 4th must be about other people.
Exactly. Alienation from fellow man or from each other. Because everyone's relating to their work and the products in this alienated way, we end up seeing each other as, well, competitors in the system, not collaborators.
So it starts very much with the individual experience, the sort of psychological damage.
Yeah, definitely. But it's still quite philosophical, maybe a bit abstract.
Which is probably why the list immediately moves to the German ideology. Putting these 2 together feels like a deliberate step, moving from that individual feeling to the bigger picture, the system itself.
Precisely. The German ideology is where Marx and Engels really break from their philosophical past and establish historical materialism. This is absolutely crucial. It's like the methodological key to everything else he writes.
Historical materialism. What's the core idea there, in simple terms?
The core idea turns philosophy on its head, basically. Instead of ideas shaping reality, Marx argues that our material existence, how we produce what we need to live, shapes our consciousness, our ideas, our society.
So how we live, how we work, that's the foundation.
Exactly. The economy, the way we organize production, that's the economic base. And everything else, law, politics, culture, religion, even philosophy. That's the superstructure, and it grows out of and is shaped by that economic base.
So if you want to understand, say, Victorian England's politics,
you first have to understand its industrial capitalism. The base shapes the superstructure. That's the fundamental argument. It allows him to claim a kind of scientific approach to history and society.
Okay, that's a huge shift. So we've got the why alienation and the how historical materialism. That sets the stage nicely for the next text, the really famous one. Let's talk about the Communist Manifesto. It sits right in the middle of this reading list.
Yeah, and its position there really tells you something about its role. It's not like the others. It's not dense philosophy or economics. It's a political pamphlet, a call to action.
Right.
It takes the big ideas from the German ideology like class struggle-driven history, capitalism's internal problems, and boils them down to the short, sharp, fiery text aimed at mobilizing people.
It's like he'd done the intellectual groundwork and thought, okay, now we need to get this out there.
Yeah.
It's probably the most impactful thing he ever wrote, communication-wise.
Absolutely. The manifesto connects the dots between the abstract critique and, well, actual revolution. It's meant to be easy to grasp, memorable, almost prophetic.
Right.
It lays out history as the story of class conflict, freeman and slave, patrician and plebeian, and uses that historical materialism to argue that capitalism's collapse isn't just something to hope for, it's baked into the system. It's inevitable.
And it worked as a rallying cry because it was so direct, even if it maybe sacrificed some nuance.
Exactly. It sacrificed academic complexity for political punch. It acts as the perfect bridge in this syllabus you've got. Connects the theory of the ideology to the massive economic analysis that comes next.
Okay, so speaking of that massive analysis, that brings us to the real heavyweights on the list. Capital and, interestingly, also the Grundrisse. This is where things get really dense, right? The economics.
This is definitely where you get the deep dive into the economic engine. If historical materialism gives you the framework of history, Capital explains how the engine of capitalism actually works, how it creates wealth, but also inequality. And to get that, you absolutely have to understand surplus value.
Surplus value. That's the key concept from Capital, isn't it? Can we boil that down? What's the core idea?
The shortest version. It's where profit comes from. It's the value a worker creates beyond the value of their own wages.
Okay.
Think of it like this. A worker gets paid enough to live on. Maybe that's equivalent to, say, 3 hours of their work. But they work a full 8-hour day. Those extra 5 hours, that's unpaid labor time. The value created in those 5 hours is extracted by the capitalist. That's surplus value.
So it's not just about unfair wages. It's about a chunk of the working day being fundamentally unpaid, and that's the source of profit.
Precisely. It frames profit not as a result of clever exchange, but of exploitation inherent in the production process itself. And that idea underpins so much else, including another really important concept, commodity fetishism.
Commodity fetishism. Okay, that sounds a bit strange, but you're saying it's important.
Yeah, it sounds academic, but it's super relevant, especially today. Basically, it's how, under capitalism, the things we buy, commodities, seem to have their own magical value based on the market, on their price tag.
Right, like my phone costs X amount.
Yeah, exactly. But Marx says we forget where that value really comes from. The human labor that went into making it. The social relationships behind the product get hidden.
Ah, so we just see the object and its price, not the work or the workers.
Yes. We interact with things, with money, and the actual human relationships, including the exploitation, the extraction of surplus value, become invisible, masked by the market. It makes the whole system seem natural, just about buying and selling stuff.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Okay, so Capital lays all this out systematically, but the list you provided also includes the Grundrisse. Why both? What's the point of reading the rough drafts if Capital is the finished product?
That's a great question, and including the Grundrisse makes this list particularly insightful, I think. The Grundrisse, it literally means outlines or foundations. It's this huge collection of notebooks Marx wrote in the late 1850s.
So his working notes, basically.
Exactly. Raw thought. It's messy, sprawling. It shows him grappling with ideas, going down different paths, exploring concepts like money, credit, automation, things that got refined or maybe even changed by the time they appeared in Capital.
So reading it gives you a sense of the process, how he got there.
Precisely. You see the intellectual struggle, the sheer scale of the project. You understand why Capital is structured the way it is. It shows that the final system wasn't just plucked out of thin air. It was the result of years of incredibly detailed, difficult work, and frankly, a lot of thinking out loud on paper. It adds a whole other dimension to understanding his economic thought.
Wow. Okay, so when you put it all together, the manuscripts on alienation, the German ideologies setting up historical materialism, the manifesto as the political call, and then the Grundrisse and Capital for the deep economic mechanics, this list really does cover a huge amount of ground.
It really does form a complete arc, doesn't it? From the early philosophical questions about being human under capitalism, to the method for analyzing history, to the political program, and finally, the massive economic explanation. It's a very comprehensive selection.
And that really gets back to why this specific list you set is so valuable. It's not just picking famous titles. It seems like a curated path to grasp the whole spectrum of Marx's thought, philosophy, politics, economics. If you work through these 5, you really should have a solid handle on the core arguments.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like an accelerated masterclass covering the foundational concepts, the political implications, and the dense economic proof, all tied together. A powerful way to approach this body of work.
So as you, the listener, move forward with this framework, really digging into these texts based on the list you provided, maybe here's a final thought to chew on.
Yeah.
If these 5 texts are, as we said, the architectural drawings for this whole intellectual system, which one of them, based on this specific list, do you think ultimately holds the most important, maybe the most enduring key to understanding Marx's influence right now, today? Is it the early humanism, the political fire, or the deep economic critique?
That's the big question, isn't it? Where does the real weight lie in his legacy? Something to think about as you dive deeper into these sources.
Definitely something to consider. Use this framework, keep exploring. Until next time, keep digging deeper.